We're live.
Good evening and welcome to the June 18th edition of Jungle Chasers. My name is Patty. My call sign is KD0AEL. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-hosts tonight, Franklin. Say hello, Franklin.
Hi, KD0RSJ.
And Steve, who's at the helm running our video equipment and keeping us all connected here on Skype.
That would be me, Steve, KA0SPM.
All right, so I did have just a little weather news to kick us off with, as we just got a brand new hazardous weather outlook from the National Weather Service office in Springfield. This does cover our 37 counties in southwest Missouri and our 3 counties in Kansas. This hazardous weather outlook is for portions of the Missouri Ozarks and extreme southeast Kansas. Day 1 tonight, we are expecting limited lightning risk. A few thunderstorms will be possible late tonight into early Friday morning across southeast Kansas and western Missouri, with cloud-to-ground lightning being the main threat. Days 2 through 7, Friday through Wednesday. Several chances for thunderstorms will occur this weekend and through early next week. Locally heavy rain will be possible at times. Some strong to limited lightning severe risk. Storms will be possible. Thunderstorms will Saturday. Be possible late tonight. Now, mind you, not everyone will be getting that. It's going to be a little bit spotty. Spotter activation will not be needed tonight, though. And there you have it.
Wait a minute, they don't need spotters for severe clear?
Not for severe clear, no. You said that and didn't miss a beat.
Well, you know.
So there is a little bit of severe weather going on across the heartland out of K-Top land, from roughly north and east of Manhattan, well, north of Clay Center, actually, Kansas, up to about Cook, Nebraska. There are severe thunderstorms along a line that is advancing to the east-northeast. It's got a cold front pushing it along. There are some marginally severe storms trailing this, but this line actually goes all the way into Canada. Kind of interesting to watch. The marginal risk goes all the way to the Gulf Coast, but as you can see from this, if it'll pop back up, there we go. All the way into Canada are some showers along this system. So, there you go. Have we heard from our counterpart?
There's a message. He is waiting for his Skype invitation.
We are waiting for his appearance.
We'll be just in time for the 5-minute rant. That is a thing, you know.
That is a thing. There he is. Welcome, Rodney, K0FZ.
Hello. Hello.
We missed you for sound effects in the pre-show.
Yeah.
I had to, the pre-show, I had to fill in for you. Dun, 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 dun. So, yeah, there you have it.
All right.
I didn't know there was a pre-show.
Well, it was more of an audio.
Like an after party.
It was more of an audio testing show more than anything.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm queued up, so if we need sound effects,
All
I'm your
right.
man.
Okay, so with some of the technicalities out of the way, I have a little bit, and this is don't anyone take this as a critique. it's an idea more than anything. Because I think we've done something that is much different than we have in the past with our nets, in that there's more of us collaborating on nets than there used to be. And I don't, other than our videos that show that, just the people that seen it are getting the idea, wait a minute, you know what, there's more people there than just a net control. And the interesting thing is that when Franklin would get bogged down in a net and somebody would call in and he's busy typing a report in, any one of us can step in and be net control just for a minute. And I think we need to get that information out to folks, that there is more here than just one person. And if you hear a strange voice come in, it's one of us being net control just for that moment during that time. And you know,
it can happen on a regional net too. It doesn't have to be limited to Greene County.
well, yeah,
There's always somebody else monitoring, and maybe we need to educate each other on, if things get swamped, it's okay to hit that text box and say, hey, can somebody grab this for a minute while I catch up? Not necessarily to read warnings, but to catch the incoming reports. So.
Well, I think it goes back to what we had said before, where we kind of run as teams.
Right.
When someone is on, it's going to be a secondary's going to be there. They're going to basically be doing stuff in the background just the same, either to assist the initial, net control, and then if something happens that they can't be on there, we immediately jump in because we've already been part of that conversation.
Exactly.
We're already helping and doing all that other stuff. So
exactly.
we are the Skywarn storm team.
right.
Yes. And we've got
Yeah,
some newbies. We've got some newbies that need experience, and I think it would be a good thing for them to run as secondaries for a while. That's how Teresa and I got started with Jim. That's how you guys got started with me. I think it's good practice. It doesn't put them under the gun so much to have to catch all the fire and manage it, but it gets them the mic time, and that's important. They're there watching and listening and doing.
Well, I mean,
I have Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
oh, I was going to say the Skype thing makes it so you're almost sitting beside them.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's in real time for the most part, so why not, right?
Right.
So go ahead, Franklin. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I was just going to say, I've spent some time on YouTube listening to some different Skywarn activation recordings and stuff, mostly just background stuff and something to listen to while I'm falling asleep. And I know some areas will kind of have, like a designated primary net control and the secondary net control every time that they have an activation. They're fortunate enough that they've either got a small number of people who are really super dedicated and have the time to be there all the time, or they're fortunate enough to have a lot of different people that can kind of rotate it around. So I guess kind of what we're talking about is kind of more like having, like a secondary, but it's not necessarily strictly mandated that this specific person for the duration of this whole net will be the secondary net control if something happens to the primary and they can't, do that.
Right.
It's kind of an understanding, and I guess we kind of need to put that out on the net so that there's not some confusion and some people thinking, well, this person's trying to assume net control and they're not supposed to. That, any one of us who are net controls could step in to either temporarily help out whoever is the primary net control,
Right.
or if, say, something happens and they're not able to communicate that, like, say, my power goes out and for whatever reason my phone battery's dead and I can't communicate that to anyone for some reason, I'd have my handheld, I could probably do that. But say if that wasn't even working, then someone else could step in, and everyone wouldn't think, oh well, this is someone trying to do something they're not supposed to.
Right. Right. And at the next time I get everybody together, I'm hoping that our next meeting we can talk some about that and be more clear on it's okay to jump in there. And it, like you said, if your power goes out, which did happen, it's good to know that somebody
I've had it happen
is there to.
2 or 3 times.
Or that Sunday morning that we got the weather that we were expecting late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That Heather had taken it. I took it for a bit, but we both had to go to work, and so I'm frantically sending text messages out. Who's available, and Teresa actually had her eye on the radar, and once she went ahead and put her lunch in a crock pot because she knew this was going to be a long day just from seeing the radar. So it's always good to have the backup, and it's with all the straight line winds and systems like we're watching out in Kansas right now that I showed a while ago, when those come through, the net control's just as vulnerable as everybody else.
Yeah.
And so having that backup's important, especially we're dispersed. We're dispersed across town. We're dispersed across the state, and to have that kind of capability for someone else to jump in is important.
Well, we have more than once had the chance where the 3.5 machine became unconnected from the 4.9 during a storm, which means that pretty much the west end of where most people were listening is not connected to the regional Skywarn anymore, and that would be having that person, maybe Marvin, maybe, I don't know, there's quite a number of folks out there.
They are actually very well organized now. They have their own net controls. They run on the 70 centimeters for the most part, but they do monitor 2 meters, and so they're good. If the 3.5 becomes disconnected, or for whatever reason Marvin has to disconnect it because sometimes it does get pretty rowdy, without the filters in place, that they've still got some coverage, and they've got people that do have chat privileges that can get that information in. So we got Teresa covering the east, we got Marvin monitoring, and Stephen Krieger too to the west. So I do have good news that I got from Michael that we're hoping that the big machine is kind of back in much better order sometime in August. They had some people step up with donations, and hoping to get the work done. Now the Buffalo machine is still down. It does not have a new home.
And that was
The
down
one that got taken down whenever they took down
the tower.
49 tower, right?
Yeah.
Channel 5. What's
Yeah,
Channel
Channel
5?
5.
It's channel 49.
Well, yeah, that's what I was meaning. That's all I could think of was it was channel 49.
Channel 5 is down by Forsyth.
That's right.
Big tower down there.
So yeah, they took it down. They didn't bother to look to see if anybody else was connected before they took the tower down. So it was unfortunate. And Michael's had some health concerns. He is on the mend. He's had his surgery now. So hopefully can get on the quest to find a new spot for that one. That was a good link.
Speaking
so
of,
then they
go
are
ahead.
going to be able to get the feed line and everything up, and hopefully maybe in August it'll be back up to full power,
Or at least half.
or at least
We
half.
can hope.
Well, that's better
We can
than
hope. Yeah.
that's better than kind of waffling between 5 to 15 watts.
Or down to 2.
I
Yeah.
hadn't heard 2.
It double beeps sometimes.
if
Gotcha.
if you have a really strong antenna on the receive end, generally speaking, you can hear the 4.9 all over. We heard it up in Stockton, up by the dam, and it was readable. I mean, it wasn't
And
great.
Miller.
And Miller, and that brings a segue into the next topic that happened over the week. I contacted Adkins and I said, hey, get over on the Southwest Missouri Amateur Radio Club's webpage, smark.org, and check out the repeater listings and send me the corrections. Well, I got about 30, and
Whoa.
those have all been corrected, and a lot of that was construction, new construction of SMLRS up towards Rolla, call signs that have changed or relocated, and both. It pretty much covers almost everything from the Missouri River south to the Missouri border to the north and south, and then from Rolla down to West Plains to clear out to Joplin. Now, I did send a message to Teresa to have her look as well, and the next person on the list would be Stephen Krieger, which he's out there and he knows what repeaters are what, and he can make a double check. I'd already communicated with the Joplin Ham radio group at one point in time because they notified me that one that was listed on there was an old listing. So it's been kind of that was a big bunch of updates, which means that all of our programming on our radios is now slightly wrong.
Oh, joy.
Which actually isn't that big a thing because most of that would be call signs, but there are a few frequency changes, and unless you're out traveling in the far reaches, nothing around town has changed.
Right.
So that's I got the nets tomorrow, so I'll probably be announcing that those changes were made, and we're going to be doing programming at the at the meeting.
Gotcha.
Have you got the chirp updated?
I have not. I've got to go through that before tomorrow and make sure that everything matches up.
Telling
If
me I'm doing the grocery shopping by myself?
I helped you do the plants, and I'm paying for it a bit now. So, but anyway, that's my addition to tonight's content is what I did on the website. It's a little more organized, a little bit nicer looking, and believe me, that's a big, huge database.
Oh, I bet.
Did you put your repeater on there, Steve?
Oh yeah, it's on there.
Cool.
I got my first topic was sort of brought up by one of our, I guess he would be a chaser, because he goes out during severe weather but don't really hear from him, and he had put a new antenna on his truck, and we did some testing, and he was the one that mentioned that it seems like sometimes the nets get overloaded, and I'm like, you haven't seen anything. Wait till we have 6 tornado warnings going at once, and that's happened
sure.
before. But it kind of brought up my thoughts is we need to have meeting days where people can bring their radios and trucks. Tech Day's good, but it seems like there's always a need for it. And with his truck, he's got a nice little antenna. It fits in the garage. I made the recommendation that he get a big 5/8 wave mag mount and stick it on there when he goes out because you need it for 2 meters. So anyway, so Patty, you're kind of running the show, so I'll let you decide what happens next.
Well, Franklin's got a presentation for us, and I'm kind of anxious to see what he found. I believe it's on the hurricane hunters. We kind of touched briefly in that direction last week, and so I'll just turn it over to Franklin. Let's see what you've got.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, and the presentation is about the hurricane hunters, a group that I knew about, but I kind of didn't know some of the history, how it got started, and all that. I have not had a chance to time this. It's about 33 slides, so I'm saying it's probably going to be somewhere around 20 to 25 minutes. I don't hope it's not much more than that, but we will see as we go through this. So let me go ahead and turn my screen sharing on. And are you guys getting my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Looks good.
Okay. So I will go ahead and start the presentation. And so, hurricane hunters, what do they do? And here's a picture I found of. Now, I didn't actually write down which plane this was. I don't think this is the current one, but it looks like one of the previous ones that they may have been using. So, who are the hurricane hunters? They are air crews that fly into tropical cyclones and gather information about the storms. Most of the crews are made up of members of the U.S. Air Force Reserve's 53rd Weather Recon Squadron and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Hurricane Hunter units. In the past, there have been other units from the United States Navy, Air Force, and NOAA that have flown these Hurricane Hunter missions as well. Kind of a bit of their history. The Hurricane Hunters were founded on a bet in 1943. Since that time, the Hurricane Hunters have lost 6 military recon planes at a cost of 53 lives. So yes, this is a very dangerous venture, but they do it because they want to help preserve life and property. Previous to the Hurricane Hunters being established, they did have some satellites that were used to locate tropical storms after they had formed, and they used planes to fly tracks to detect formations of tropical storms. When modern satellites made it possible to detect cyclones even before they formed, the planes were shifted to flying into these storms to measure barometric pressure, wind speeds, and other data from inside the storms themselves. This data is used to accurately predict the storm's movement and development. So, in 1943, they had what they called the surprise hurricane, and this was during World War II. At that time, a group of British pilots were training in Texas when a hurricane threatened the AT-6 trainer planes located at Bryan Field. They questioned the construction of these planes. So, of course, in traditional American fashion, when Colonel Joe Duckworth heard that, he wasn't having any of it. He took one of the trainers into the eye of that storm. Along with his navigator, Lieutenant Ralph O'Hare, they wanted to prove that the planes were of sound construction. When the base's weather officer, Lieutenant William Jones Burdick, heard about this, he immediately had Colonel Duckworth take him out on a second flight into the same storm.
I want to go. Me too.
Oh, God.
This flight showed that hurricane recon flights could be done and the planes returned safely. The moniker Hurricane Hunters was first coined in 1946. It has been used by the Air Force and Air Force Reserves ever since. So, back in the day, whenever the Navy was part of this, VW-4, please, I apologize if I get this wrong, where Coron 4 Weather Recon Squadron was the Navy's 7th squadron that was dedicated to the task of weather recon. Even though they flew several types of aircraft, this unit was most associated with the WC-121N Willie Victor. These planes were flown from late 1954 till 1972. From 1973 to 1975, they used the Lockheed WP-3 Orion. V-4W lost 6 planes during hurricane hunting missions. They also had a plane that was severely damaged in a storm, but was not lost. That WC-121N returned its crew safely home, but it never flew again. And here's a list of the 6 different planes that were lost. Most of them, it looks like, were actually during typhoons, so these would have been in the Pacific Ocean. One was lost in 1955 in Hurricane Janet over the Caribbean. That particular plane went down with 9 crew, and oddly enough, 2 Canadian journalists were aboard as well.
Wow.
And then the big one was on October 12th, 1974, Typhoon Bess. A Lockheed W6-130 Hercules plane departed from Clark Field Air Force Base in the Philippines with the call sign of Swan 38. Radio contact was lost on October 12th with the plane. The plane apparently was heading into the typhoon's eye to make a second position fix. There were no transmissions made that indicated that there was a problem before contact was lost. Search teams never found the plane or any of the crew. Swan 38 was the only WC-130 Hercules ever lost in a storm. And those are big planes. Here's a picture of the 121N Willie Victor. And I see I forgot to put a in quotation sign there. Oh,
And
well.
and that
It was...
is a Lockheed Constellation in civilian terms.
Yeah. A lot of these planes are either variants or modifications of either civilian or military craft. As you can see, it's a 4-engine. I don't know whether this would have just been a propeller or considered a turboprop plane, but most of the planes that are used, even still today, are turboprop engines.
The Constellation had
And then-
piston engines.
Okay. And then this is the Lockheed WP-3A Orion. There is still a version of the Orion that's used today, which we'll see a little bit later on, but I'm assuming from the 3A designation, this was the very first version. And then, with Hurricane Katrina, the 53rd Weather Recon Squadron, which are part of the Hurricane Hunters, is based out of Kessler Air Force Base in Mississippi, which was heavily damaged by Hurricane Katrina. They temporarily had to move their operations to Dobbins Air Force Base near Atlanta. And even though a lot of their equipment was a complete loss due to the hurricane, the unit did not miss a single mission and continued to serve the National Hurricane Center throughout all of Hurricane Katrina. Eventually, the 53rd Weather Recon Squadron was able to return to its home at Kessler Air Force Base. And this picture here is actually a picture of the eye wall of Hurricane Katrina that was taken on August 28th, 2005. So we have the Hurricane Hunters today. What kind of equipment do they use today? Well, we'll start off with talking about the 53rd Weather Recon Squadron. Today they use Lockheed WC-130J Hercules planes as their Hurricane Hunters.
And that's based on a military plane, correct?
Oh, yes, that is the C-130 Hercules are like the big, huge cargo planes that you might have seen in movies or on TV shows. They move everything from cargo to personnel to heavy equipment. I was surprised. I don't know how big or small these are, but I had read earlier that they are even able to carry helicopters. So they are large planes. And the C-130 has a multi-mission role and can be quickly converted to a variety of mission types, as I just now stated. This makes it an excellent craft to be used as a weather platform without the need to extensively modify the actual plane itself. In fact, the C-130s used by the 53rd Weather Recon Squadron can easily be converted back to their original duties if needed. The cargo area of the C-130 carries 2 weather-exclusive pallets that carries much of the equipment needed for the hurricane hunting roles. The ARWO pallet, which I couldn't find any explanation of what that acronym stands for, holds the computer system used to process all of the data that the C-130s collect about weather. There's also a radio and satellite control system included for data communications back to the mainland. The Airborne Vertical Atmospheric Profile System, or as I like to call it, AVAPS, pallet contains equipment to collect data about conditions below the aircraft. It uses GPS-enabled drop sondes for this purpose. GPS drop sondes are launched from the C-130s and dropped to the ocean below. They are instrument packages that are attached to a parachute for gathering weather data in the hurricane. They're typically launched between 5,000 and 38,000 feet in the air, and they fall at a rate of about 2,500 feet per minute. The drop sondes then transmit current pressure, temperatures, humidity, wind speeds with direction and GPS positioning. This information is transmitted back to the C-130s twice every second. And here's a picture of one of the Lockheed WC-130Js, and I know they have a big, huge back ramp that opens up that they can load equipment in and stuff. And Steve, you probably know a little bit more about military aircraft. Is the 130 Hercules, is that the one that the whole nose portion can basically pivot up and they can unload and load stuff from there too?
No, actually on the 130 it's the rear. They've got the doors fold in on the top and down in the back so that it has a platform about truck height, so you can back a truck up to it. They also have a ramp on that platform as well, so you can drive vehicles in the back.
Yeah, like I had mentioned before, they can carry infantry vehicles. They can carry helicopters. I'm pretty sure they can even
M1
carry
Abrams. Yeah, they can.
Now they can't. The 130 can't, but the C-17 can. So that.
Really? I thought the 130 could.
No, it's Abrams is about 48 tons, and that's a little more than that, and it's bigger than that cargo area. But
I wonder if they could carry something like a Bradley.
Yeah, they do smaller vehicles. Gotcha. And the interesting thing is they throw a parachute out the back and the thing slides out on a pallet and gets airdropped. Dang.
Yeah, I think I did put it in the slides, but I think it said that each of the 130 Hercules could carry 6 pallets.
Yeah. Now the pallet.
Sorry, go ahead.
The pallet that you're referring to, that's all just for atmospheric testing. It's not a.
Yeah, the two that I mentioned are, but I am assuming that they are kind of mounted on the same pallet system as they would use for carrying other cargo and stuff. They slide in and out. So that's probably the reason why, if these were needed for another role, they could just simply slide those pallets out and they're ready to go for their original purpose.
Right.
So in July of 2012, the Weather Channel had premiered a show called Hurricane Hunters. This was a reality TV show that featured the crews of the U.S. Air Force Reserve 53rd Weather Recon Squadron. The show lasted for 15 episodes that were spread out over 2012 and 2013. The series showcased the lives of the brave men and women that face the savage forces of nature. Their risks provide us with better information about hurricanes in an effort to protect lives. So we'll go ahead and move on to NOAA's Hurricane Hunters. And they use the Lockheed WP-3D Orion. I guess you could say either a cousin or a great grandchild of the original WP-3 Orions that were used. The current planes used have a pair of the current planes that are used are a pair of Lockheed WP-3D Orion four-engine turboprop aircraft. And I found it interesting. You'll find that there's a bit of a theme to the NOAA's Hurricane Hunter planes. The two WP-3Ds are nicknamed Kermit and Miss Piggy. So someone at NOAA must be a fan of the Muppets. They also deploy GPS-equipped drop sondes that they call drop wind sondes as the plane flies through a storm. They also measure pressure, humidity, temp, and wind direction and speed along with the GPS position. They constantly send these readings as the sensor falls from the plane to the ocean surface. The WP-3Ds also contain two different radar systems. They have a tail-mounted Doppler radar, and the lower belly also has a separate radar system. Combining these both gives them a vertical and horizontal view of the hurricane. And whenever I was reading this, I had wanted to ask Patty. I'm assuming this would be very similar to, or give a similar picture to dual radar on the land?
Yes, it would. And not having done the research, but that's in essence what our Doppler radar does. It reads both the horizontal and vertical as it sends the beam through the storm. So yes, it would no doubt send back similar data.
Awesome. The WP-3Ds also drop sensors called bath thermographs that take the temperature of the ocean water below it. Temps below tropical storms can give forecasters an idea of how the storms may strengthen and to forecast category upgrades. Forecast accuracy of storm surges has been greatly increased due to the inclusion of stepped frequency microwave radiometers. They measure the wind speeds over the ocean and rain rates in the hurricanes. These are key indicators on if there will be a particularly dangerous storm surge associated with the storm. Storm surges are a major killer in association with tropical storm deaths. In addition to studying tropical storms from a scientific standpoint, the hurricane hunters also fly missions at the request of the National Weather Service's National Hurricane Center based in Miami, Florida. These missions are primarily to do the following: locate the center of the storm, measure the central pressure, and measure surface winds around the eye of the storm. The safety of people along the coast of the U.S. are directly affected by both the scientific and recon missions flown by the hurricane hunters. And here's a picture of that Lockheed WP-3D Orion. Kind of looks a little bit similar to the 3A version, but a newer, more updated, and of course with more equipment and better equipment. This particular one is the one that is nicknamed Kermit, and this photo was taken whenever it was taking off from Tampa, Florida on June 18th, 2017. At that time, it had just been recently upgraded and repainted. I was surprised to also find that NOAA has a Gulfstream jet. They actually had a Gulfstream 4 SP that was customized for them. It can fly much higher than the two WP-3Ds can. This plane helps to get a better overall picture of the hurricane. The G4 can fly with a range of 4,000 nautical miles and at a cruising altitude of 45,000 feet. It gets details of weather systems in the upper atmosphere that surround the storms being studied, which just due to the fact that they can't fly that high, the Orions just cannot do that. Even if I remember correctly, I'm wanting to think 38,000 feet is about the top altitude, even for the 130 Herculeses. So this Gulfstream can even fly higher than those. Since it was introduced in 1997, the G4 has flown missions around almost every Atlantic-based hurricane that has posed a threat to the United States. The G4 uses GPS drop wind sondes, just like the Orion planes do, and also has a tail Doppler radar to map steering currents for thousands of square miles around a storm. The G4 has also been used to gather information about atmospheric rivers that develop upstream from winter storms. These are narrow bands of moisture that regularly form above the Pacific Ocean and then flow in towards the western coast of North America. These atmospheric rivers usually produce very heavy rain and snowfall totals. And of course, going with our NOAA Muppet theme, the Gulf Stream is nicknamed Gonzo. I would say the only thing that would make that better is the nickname should just be the Great Gonzo.
The Great Gonzo.
And here's a picture of Gonzo.
Nice.
It doesn't have a big curved nose.
Yeah.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if they come out with, Bunsen and Beaker here pretty soon?
An animal.
You never know. There's plenty of names they could use. NOAA's Aircraft Operations Center, which is where the WP-3Ds and the G4 are housed, is located in Lakeland, Florida. This is part of NOAA's Office of Marine and Aviation Operations. Included in the Office of Marine and Aviation Operations are civilians and officers of the NOAA Corps. Have you ever heard of that? I hadn't before today. NOAA Corps is one of the nation's 7 uniformed services. So I'm assuming that 5 of those they are including the 5 branches of the U.S. military. The NOAA Corps pilots, civilian engineers, meteorologists, and electrical engineers are specially trained to fly these planes in weather conditions that would ground a normal aircraft. Most of the highly specialized equipment that are used aboard NOAA-flown aircraft are designed, built, and calibrated by members of the Aircraft Operations Center's Science and Engineering Division. When it isn't hurricane season, the planes operated by NOAA are used in other severe weather and atmospheric research missions. These planes are flown by NOAA Corps pilots all over the world and in many different types of weather conditions. And here's a picture of the hangar at NOAA's Aircraft Operations Center.
That's cool.
Wow.
And now, Steve has a video from YouTube that I thought people might like to see. It just kind of gives a little bit of a very concise kind of explanation of what these planes do. It's between about, I think, about 2.5 to not quite 3 minutes. So if you could go ahead and play that.
All right.
Franklin, I think you're going to have to kill your screen, so Steve.
Okay. Hold on.
The job of a hurricane hunter is not for the faint at heart. These brave men and women must fly straight into one of the most destructive forces in nature. Hurricanes are born over the open ocean, and while satellites can track their movement, meteorologists and researchers need to sample the storms directly to get the most accurate information about them. NOAA's Hurricane Hunter fleet includes 2 P-3 turboprop aircraft, as well as a Gulfstream 4 jet. The P-3s fly through the storm, encountering devastating winds that can be over 150 miles per hour. The jet can fly higher than the turboprops, gathering data from the upper atmosphere. Both planes have high-tech equipment on board to get the job done, like radar and fixed probes that measure particles in the air. Scientists also deploy drop wind sondes, which parachute down through the hurricane to the ocean surface, sending back data on pressure, temperature, humidity, and wind. These measurements can help us understand the structure of the storm and the winds that are steering it. The data is used in computer models that help forecasters predict how intense the hurricane will be and where and when it will strike land. Hurricane hunters take a literal look into the eye of a monster formed by nature. Their courage helps further science, which saves lives.
There.
There we go. I just thought everyone would be kind of a little bit interested in that and like to see that it wasn't too long. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with the presentation. I'm almost done. And is my placeholder slide back up there?
Yep.
Hurricane Hunter video, yes.
Yep.
And that video was from NOAA. It was actually on the website that they have for their hurricane hunters from the aviation center, I believe.
It is actually NOAA is the name of the YouTube page.
Gotcha.
So you can go there and see it.
And I've got a couple pages of some further resources. I did take some of this information from the Hurricane Hunters Wikipedia page. The Hurricane Hunters Association, which is just pretty much www.hurricanehunters.com. The National Hurricane Center, which they work heavily with, www.nhc.noaa.gov. The NOAA Office of Marine and Aviation Operations Hurricane Hunter page, that's the one that I originally found the video from their YouTube page. So there's the link there for that, www.omao.noaa.gov/learn/aircraft-about/hurricane-hunters. And then the next page, even though they're not really a part of it anymore, there is a page that kind of tells the story of the U.S. Navy's involvement in the Hurricane Hunters. You can find that at www.navyhurricanehunters.com. And then finally, the NOAA Aircraft Operations Centers page can be found at, it looks like www.aoc.noaa.gov. And finally, we would like to thank you for watching this from the Jungle Chasers. And that is my presentation.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney.
So that was really awesome. You mentioned something about the uniformed services, and they are the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services, and Department of Commerce. And that is what NOAA is a part of, Department of Commerce.
Okay. Gotcha.
So those guys include also, well, actually, Homeland Security has the Coast Guard. They used to be part Department of Commerce, but they moved. So, yeah.
So you didn't say Marines.
They are a part of the Navy.
I knew you were going to say that.
But they got their own song.
What
They
about
are-
the Coast Guard?
The Coast Guard has their own song,
you know,
too.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, think that the Coast Guard is actually just part of the Navy, but it is its own separate branch of
It
the
is
armed
its own
forces.
separate branch. Yes, it is.
Yes. And also, I think sometimes a lot of people think, oh, the Coast Guard just along like the Atlantic coast or the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific coast. If I am not mistaken, the Coast Guard can actually control some major waterways inside the mainland USA. Is that not correct?
That
We have Coast Guard Reserve here locally for our lakes.
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
Lewis just posted. The Coasties, the Brown Water Navy. So that's they're the guys that can do the rivers. But to be honest with you, those guys don't get enough credit for what they do. I spoke with a couple of them that were kind of preparing for a hurricane down in Florida, and I said, how long do you think you got? Oh, a day or so. And I'm like, you better sleep as hard as you can, because when this baby hits, you're not going to get any rest. He goes, I know.
Yeah. You know, I hope it's not quite as much as it used to be. I know a lot of people used to think, oh, well, you're in the Coast Guard, you don't really do anything. Kind of like some people think, oh, well, you're in the National Guard or you're a reservist, you don't really see action. That's all. To take a little bit of a strong tone, BS. They can potentially see just as much action as someone in the Navy, someone in the Marines, and like you said, particularly during times when there's hurricanes or tropical storms coming in, or if there's, you know, a state or national emergency, they are a very integral link in the system that helps protect everyone.
You know, the one particular story that was very, it struck a chord with me, and the rescue crews that go out there and save people in their boats when the big storms hit. The couple of guys were talking about, we were out after the sailboat that had got stuck in 40 to 70 foot waves. They're in a helicopter.
Ooh, gosh.
And they're going to dive into the water to save these people. And so it's dark. They can't see the waves. So they either have a 2-foot drop or a 50-foot drop, depending on the timing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, on whether the wave is at its peak or not.
right. And you know what? The guys just keep doing it. They keep going back out there, and they save people that probably shouldn't be. And it's just, to me, it's amazing.
They do it because they want to serve their country and they want to help save lives.
Yeah. There was one old guy that I talked to in Miami, and he was retired Coast Guard. And I tell you what, man, I would love to eat dinner, buy that guy dinner and hang out just to hear the stories. Because he had been saving people in the Bermuda Triangle for years. I'm like, oh, wow.
He doesn't happen to know the location of a few Army Avenger planes, does he?
No, he doesn't. But he does know that the target they were set to bomb, and that's just off the coast of Bimini.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, which, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of the northern point of the triangle, isn't it? Around Bimini.
yeah, sorta. Yeah, I'd have to.
Yeah.
A little more Google Ninja work here while you were talking.
Ninja.
And
Oh, no problem.
the Lockheed P3 Orion is it's based on the L-188 Electra, which was first
I've heard
introduced.
that.
Yeah, it was first introduced in 1957. The one that I was on was called an Electra. They did not call it an Orion. And they called it an Electra, and the guy that was giving us the tour said they did that because there's like 17 miles of electric wire in this airplane.
Firing in it.
Yeah, it got its name honest. It had the little chutes where they could drop the radio sondes in, and it has a tail boom on it for detecting magnetic anomalies. That was kind of cool stuff. It's slated to be replaced with a new plane called the Boeing P-8 Poseidon, which is, it sort of looks like a more modern jet, and it has jet engines instead of turboprops. So
Instead of turboprops. Cool.
yeah, it's actually based on a 737-800 airliner. So,
Oh, okay.
so I hadn't, they didn't mention anything about the Hurricane Hunters taking that over, but I just can't imagine taking a 737 into a hurricane. It just
Well, I'm trying to think. Well, actually, I was about ready to make a misstatement. I was going to ask if that was the same model as the previous Air Force One, and I keep on forgetting that wasn't a 737. That was a 707,
yes.
which was an even smaller jet. So
Now that
comment irrelevant.
that fits into the conversation. Patty and I were out in Topeka, and we really want to go back to the Combat Air Museum. A little shout out to those guys, and the Kansas Air National Guard Museum and National Guard Museum. We were coming south out of Topeka, and there sit a KC-135 right along beside the road, and I'm like, oh my God, we got to go back.
I bet that would be interesting.
It's a 707 that is their cargo variant. That plane has been in service for more than 50 years. The B-52 has also been in service for more than 50. And the Orion, even though it wasn't, as a Lockheed Electra, it wasn't quite as old, but it's one of those ones that they've just kept in service forever. And
Now, one thing that I actually saw either last night or today, I can't remember if it was last night or earlier today, I was actually going through, and a guy that I went to school with and was in band with, he was 2 years younger than me, had been a realtor around here, and then he moved to Washington, D.C., and I don't think he's a realtor anymore. I think he's doing something else. But he had recently posted on his Instagram page, and I kind of went through some of his old posts because he hadn't posted a whole lot. And whenever he first moved to D.C. here a couple years ago, he had went to the Smithsonian's Air Annex, which I'm wanting to think, if I remember right, I think that's maybe at Dulles Air Force. Is it at Dulles Air Force Base, or?
Dulles is the airport in D.C.
Okay. It's Edwards is the Air Force Base that's close by there. Okay.
No, Edwards
So-
is in California.
No, it's in California.
All right,
what's
time
the
for
other
Google
one
Foo
they
here.
Sometimes land Air Force One at.
Well,
Um,
Smithsonian has
Andrews
buildings
Air Force
all over
Base.
Washington, and don't know about the Air Museum, if that's actually at an Air Force or at a airport, or if it's in another building. I don't know.
I
it's
was
Andrews Air
thinking
Force
it was-
Base.
Is it Andrews?
Andrews is where I was thinking of. Okay. It's either Andrews or Dulles, and I'm wanting to think. Whoa, what was that?
That's that Google Foo, man.
Oh, my lord. It may not be part of the airport, but I think it's close by because they've got hangars and hangars of airplanes, and they have to kind of fly them in there, I guess, to get them there. But one of the pictures, it was the first one that I saw from that group, is one of my favorite military aircraft plane of all time, the SR-71 Blackbird.
Mm-hmm.
So to end a long story that's a bit confusing, that's where we got to, was an SR-71.
Sometime, if one of our viewers would like to join us and pay our way, it would be a glorious day at the Combat Air Museum, which is located at Forbes Field, which is a very famous World War II Air Force base, or United States Army Air Corps at the time. I don't think Patty and I tire of visiting these old former World War II air bases that her daddy shut down when he.
After the war, Dad was still with the Air Inspector's office. I guess just prior to the Air Force being formed, or during that time when it was coming about, he was still in the Army Air Corps, and he closed out bases in Kansas City, Independence, Garden City. Did we decide he had been at Topeka or not?
I'm sure he probably set foot there a few times, since that was the premier base of the state at the time.
Right. So I don't know if I've told the story about Garden City, and that was quite a. There's a B-52 buried under the runway there that Dad told me about. What he had to do in helping close these bases down was to account for every bit of Air Force Army Air Corps equipment that took to the air, and they could not account for this plane. They could not determine where it was supposed to be, where it was from. They had to destroy it, and there was he said a lot of equipment that wound up being buried to destroy it, and that plane got buried. So some archaeologist someday is going to have a ball.
Well, when we visited
paved a runway over it.
Independence, which its role in World War II was basic flight training. That was, if you got chosen to be a pilot, that's one of the first places you went to learn how to fly. And they've got an expanse of tarmac there that you can't hardly see to the end of. I mean, it must be 30 acres of concrete, and it's made to hold up big aircraft like B-17s and B-29s. So the stuff's about 36 inches deep. And they do still have the original hangar there yet, but Cessna has took over a part of it, and they're building their little competitor to the Gulfstream jets there.
We pulled in. We were on our way back from seeing the 4104.
Yeah.
Did I get the numbers right on that? And decided to do a little roundabout since we were in the area. And we're very pleased to find one of the old hangars still in existence that looked like it was probably from the 30s. Without a doubt in my mind, it was that design.
Big curved.
The only thing left of what had been there. Everything else, Cessna has built this brand new facility there, and so pretty cool.
It's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Except for the little outhouse on the prairie.
Which was really not impressive. I wasn't impressed anyway.
Well, it was, what's her name?
You weren't impressed by a little house out there on the prairie?
Well, the Little House on the Prairie book, we didn't know it, but she had lived for a short period of time just to the southwest of Independence, Kansas. And they've recreated what it would have looked like. And it's always Little Outhouse on the Prairie for me. And I'm thinking that ought to be a movie.
Hey, I would, if I ever got the money, I would fund it as a parody movie.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It's taking a bad turn, folks. Taking a bad turn.
The reason I don't like the TV show, we have got to find someone who looks almost exactly like Michael Landon. Because even though I have loved him in everything else I have ever seen the man in, I do not like his character in Little House of the Prairie. Just me.
I don't know anybody right offhand that's even close.
I don't either. I don't either.
I think I might know an Amishman up north that does, but
anybody with that hair.
No, I don't either.
There was something else too that we encountered near Independence, Kansas. That was kind of cool. Besides that,
Possibly the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library.
no, that's up in Independence, Missouri, and that is on the bucket
this was
list.
Kansas. I'm sorry.
We've been through the Eisenhower.
You're thinking about Ike, and that's in Abilene, and we have been there.
Oh my God, is that place awesome?
Yeah,
Oh,
because I've seen the pictures on Facebook.
oh, and we missed, what was it, 75 anniversary for D-Day invasion last year.
We were gonna go, and I don't know, they're just finances for one.
Life just didn't let us.
Yeah, life didn't let us.
Oh my God, that would have
But
been so cool.
We were given a heads up on this, and we were to get tickets early for it, and it would have been 2-day camp out in Mosquitoland, but I tell you, it sounded like it was going to be absolutely amazing. So
I always kind of thought of Ike as a bit of
Does sound.
a stiff old whatever, but I don't think anything could be further from the truth, honestly. You want to talk about a president that cared more about his golf game? There was him right there.
there's a slice of a tree in the museum that came from a golf course in Florida, I want to say.
Yeah, something like that.
And he had cussed that tree for many years because he always sliced into it. And so they've taken this section, and it's probably that tree was probably as wide as I am tall. And they polished it up, and in the tree rings they have calculated different events that happened in Ike's lifetime, and they have flagged them in the tree rings. It's really kind of cool.
So you're saying he really liked golf. So you're telling me that there is a reason why the putting green that was put in on the south lawn of the White House is called the Eisenhower putting green.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But the World War II stuff was like, amazingly.
Oh, I bet.
The history, it was just, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be sure that Truman's is going to be as good. There's another one
Probably.
of the historic presidents that is from my home state, and that's in West Branch, Iowa. It's Herbert Hoover's Presidential Library. It still is there.
I
So,
didn't know he was from Iowa.
yep.
Wow,
Not many
you know,
presidents have
I
been.
figured somewhere northeast, east coast.
Yep.
Wow. And I don't know, did they do a presidential library for Franklin Roosevelt?
Yeah, they did.
Is
they
it in
pretty
or
much
near
did.
New Hyde Park?
Just a minute.
Don't
Make the sound
know.
effect.
Because those three would, kind of like you said, would be very, very good for World War II history and World War II buffs.
Right.
That is,
one museum in Kansas City.
Yeah, I'd love to get up there and see that.
Presidential Library and Museum. Where's it at?
I would guess either in or near New Hyde Park, New York, because that's kind of where the Roosevelts were from.
Yep. 4079 Albany Post Road, Hyde Park, New York.
You know what else is up there, don't you?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot up in that area of the world. That's
The CIA. And you all thought it was in Virginia.
careful now. I had an aunt
Do
that
you know what the CIA
worked there.
was originally?
No.
It was the OSS.
Oh, what it was. Okay, I thought you said where originally. Yes, and there's an interesting tie-in with how I know that with what CIA is in New Hyde Park, New York. the reason that I know about the OSS is because a lot of people did not know this. Julia Child, before she became the
Ha!
cook and the
That's a
cook show
short
host,
reference to her in 2 days.
I know. She was I believe, an analyst for the OSS. That's how she met her husband, Paul Child, because he worked for the OSS too. And later, after the war was over, he was actually a diplomat. That's how they ended up going to France. But the CIA that is in New Hyde Park is actually the Culinary Institute of America. It is the only culinary cooking school in the United States that actually has on-campus residence for their cooking students. That is just a school of culinary arts. Now I know, like, I think it's Wellesley has a culinary program, but they do other things. All they do at the Culinary Institute of America is just culinary arts.
Very cool.
Wow, I have segued across the country.
Well, it's been a great night.
It has. And I've got a rant.
Yeah, we haven't done our 5-minute rant segment of the show, and I think we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll start with Patty because she's got the rant ready. So let's say
I've got the rant ready.
let's do it.
So I don't know how many of you were in the meeting. Franklin, you missed it.
I did.
With the Weather Service the other day. A comment was made, and it burned into me. And I hear it from a lot of people, not just from, people that serve their communities, but in the community at large. And it's this. It's only a severe thunderstorm.
Oh, okay.
It hit me like a dagger. What do we see the most of in severe weather? We see severe thunderstorms. What are the possible dangers from severe thunderstorms? High wind, hail, sometimes extremely large hail. Ask the people that were in Wright County, Texas County, Houston. Houston got nailed with baseball-sized hail. Ask the people in Oklahoma in 1995 who had 113-mile-an-hour winds driving grapefruit-sized hail through their homes what just wind and hail can do. 60-mile-per-hour winds. Can you hold your car on the road in that? Well, in the wet conditions that we have had, how many trees have gone down on people's homes because the root systems the soil's so loose from the moisture in the soil. These huge trees are toppling over on people's homes. I heard a report about a woman was driving down. It was in Wright County, driving down the highway in a severe thunderstorm, and a tree fell over on her car while she was driving. She called it in and said, "I've been in an accident." Well, it was a weather-related accident. That car was no longer drivable. So, there's severe weather criteria for a reason. Oh, and let's add flash flooding in there. Lightning. So flash flooding in the Ozarks is our #1 killer.
And number 2 throughout the United States.
So hearing people refer to it as only a severe thunderstorm and they let their guard down, I just want to make sure that there's education out there to folks. Take heed. If they've issued a severe thunderstorm warning for you, listen to what's coming your way. Is it 60-mile-an-hour winds, 70-mile-an-hour winds, 80, 90? I mean, we've had 100-mile-an-hour winds come through. I sat in Kansas in a 100-mile-an-hour wind. Believe me, it's no joke. I was in the basement waiting for my windows to blow in. Was surprised I didn't hear the crashing. So, and the damage that had to be repaired afterward to the house itself and to the yard. Have you ever driven through a town that's been hit with hail like Houston was just hit with? Well, I was in Wichita. I used to call it Dimple Town. We had so many hailstorms when I was there. It was, unless you had a garage, your car was totaled. You were driving around with hail dents. So, yeah, not just a thunderstorm, severe thunderstorm. These have severe criteria on them because they are dangerous to life and property. That's my rant.
Thank you for that rant, Patty.
I would have probably had the same rant if I'd heard that. Maybe it was a good thing that I overslept and I didn't make the meeting.
Is there...
I would have been like, huh?
Everybody gets their rant opportunity. Who's next?
Rodney hasn't talked for a while.
He doesn't
I'll
talk
make
through
something
most
up.
of this thing.
5-minute rant. Anything but politics.
Oh, let me get the crickets. Hold on.
Oh boy.
I'm just kidding. I don't have a rant today. I had a good week. I can't really complain. So,
So you can have a
I
good
mean,
rant. Tell us
yeah.
the good things that have
a
been
good
going
rant? Want me to have a good
on.
rant? I might do it off the air because
Uh,
a lot of it, some of it's work personal, and it doesn't need to be broadcasted. But it's been a good week, at least for me.
Cool.
all right,
I got a
Franklin.
new letter opener. It wasn't necessarily this week, but I got one.
Franklin, time for your rant.
My rant? Do I have a rant?
You got 5 minutes. This is your time.
I got 5 minutes. This is my time.
So is this going to be a regular segment? 'Cause
This
we're
is
gonna
a
start working it.
Okay, I
Regular
know what I
segment,
can
yeah,
rant about.
it is.
We're not any of us. We're not any of us relying on AT&T for our internet connection, are we?
Yeah,
Oh,
No.
not at
Hold
all.
on.
Not for the last 15 years, no.
relying is so
I don't-
subjective.
I don't know if Rodney has heard this. Steve knows this. I don't know if Patty knows this.
Hey,
So,
yeah,
Rodney-
I've heard it.
Oh yes, because I
spent the
put
whole
it in. I put it
evening
in the one
talking
chat.
about-
Well, the people watching don't know this. So
Are you sure
I'm
you
going to rant.
I don't know this.
Okay, so Rodney and Steve got me onto the ideal about moving my router so that I could hook my computer directly up to Ethernet to the modem router, so that I could get faster speeds to my computer.
Yeah,
We tried it. We tried it one night and we couldn't get it to work, so I had to put everything back. And I think I tried it another time after that was going to, and kept on never doing it. Well, here, I think it was last week, or it was in between last Thursday and today, I tried it. I had everything hooked up correctly. I had everything fine. Still wouldn't work. Still getting that little red flashing light for the broadband that the internet's not. So I'm like, what in the world could it possibly be? We did say something, I can't remember if it was I suggested it or one of the other two suggested. Maybe they have to set up the connection or something. So I called AT&T customer service and I get a hold of the guy. And finally, come to find out after we do 2 or 3 different checkings and everything, and he says, well, it appears like your modem isn't connected to the main line. I'm like, okay. Apparently, even though I have 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, I'm sorry, no, 4. 3 bedrooms, front room, have Ethernet connections in the wall, built in. They will only connect one of them at a time to the main line. Okay. Pardon me for assuming that when you came and hooked up internet to my apartment unit, all 4 connections were connected at the same time. So I say, okay, can they just switch that over, or is that something that a technician has to come out to do? Well, we'll have to schedule a technician to come out, and depending on what their schedule is, how everything is about coronavirus and stuff, I'm not for sure how long that'll take. Okay. Is there a charge for that? Yes, there's a service fee. Let me look that up. Oh, for them to come out and disconnect the current jack and hook the other one up to the main line will be a standard service fee of $149.
They've got up 20.
I'm
I'm
like,
in the wrong
Oh
business.
boy.
and I specifically told him this. I said, the guy who came up and hooked up the service, to the best of my recollection, never said anything about this. I said, had I known there would be a service charge to change it, had I known that it would only be one connector hooked up to begin with, I might have had it connected into this room instead of in there. Doesn't even say anything about, oh, well, maybe if they didn't tell you or something, maybe I can see if I could get that reduced or waived. Yeah. So it's just, well, it'll be a $149 service fee, and I'm not for sure how soon they could get to it.
That hurts.
So I'm like, well, just to move the thing basically 10 feet on the other side of the wall,
Be cheaper
I
to
really
buy a
don't want to
booster.
I really don't want to pay $149 for it.
It'd be cheaper to buy a booster.
Well, and you see, it's not even the fact that I have a problem with the signal coming to the computer. I don't. It's just going through the Wi-Fi, unless you just probably pay an outrageously huge amount for like the top of the line router. A Wi-Fi signal is always going to be a lesser data throughput than having it connected directly up with Ethernet.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
you've got
So-
an airport though, and the airport
I
has.
do have an airport, but I don't have the ACC that it supports in any of my wireless equipment. It's all in or draft in.
Exactly.
So I'm going to be limited to those speeds, not the AC speeds that the router supports.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I really don't want to pay $149 for it. And then
I know a guy that would put a piece of wire in there that they won't find until they tear the building down, and I'd do it just for dinner. Seriously.
I know that. And I know who you're talking about too. But another guy that I know about that may sort of work in a related industry field turned me on to the fact that right now for a year I could get service through Mediacom and get, what was it I looked up? I could get 100, I think it's 100 megabits down for $39.99 a month, which is $10 less than what I'm paying now. And I'm paying for 6 megabits down. Or I could pay $49.99, which is the same as what I'm paying for AT&T now, and get 200 gigabits a month down.
5 minutes are up.
AT&T may be getting a
Yep. 5 minutes are up.
I know. You guys should know. I can't talk about making a 2-minute egg in 5 minutes.
So, alright. Here is my multi-part rant. And this happens every year. It's field day. And I'm looking at the rules and I'm like, wow, a satellite would be kind of cool. And then I'm realizing if we make a satellite contact, that's 100 points. If we make, let's see, 20 go-to contacts, that's 100 points. If we're in a public place, that's 100 points. And so I'm working on several possibilities here. I've got, and this may be not a total rant, I did figure out that I can control GQRX with GPredict. It'll do the Doppler shift for me. And that means I've got a software-defined radio that tunes itself to the satellite, and it works. I was on CAS 2B, I think is what it's called. It's a Chinese linear translator. And the single sideband just stayed right there. I didn't have to tune it. It matched perfectly. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. The problem is that SDRs are kind of deaf. And that's a rant right there, is that SDRs are kind of deaf. And I've got a good one here. This is supposed to be the, it's the RTL, let's see, RTL 2832U TXO plus bias T plus HF. And that thing is deaf. I've got $6 ones that work better than that thing does. And
see, in all my research that I've done online, TRL and the SDR plays are the two that I keep hearing about everywhere.
yeah, and they don't suffer. And the one you got, Rodney, the clone of the higher bitrate SDR, it does work better. I'm going to give it that. So, granted, I did not spend a lot of money for that one part, but as it turns out, right now the best ones I have are the cheapest ones. They have better ears and lower noise. The other thing would be kind of cool is if we had a computer controllable dual band UHF VHF all mode rig. Do we know anybody? That would be awesome.
I have one that does 2 meters.
Yeah, I know it. That does bring us into half of the satellites, but you have to receive on UHF. Now, you know what? In the next week, I probably can sort out this. The other thing I thought that would be just super easy for a satellite contact is we do it on digital. We do a packet APRS contact. The idea there is you send up a standardized greeting. They've got the text on the ARR website, and you send it up to like the International Space Station. It relays it back down. You send yours. You copy somebody else's. That counts as a contact. That's probably what we're going to do. I'm thinking. Now, I think Lumina's bringing the big Arrow Alaska version, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's what she told me whenever I was messaging her right before we went on, or well, right as we were going on, was that she will dig out the Alaskan Arrow and try to bring it.
So, I think I'm almost at 5. The last thing is we've got to have shade and cool at field day.
Yeah, me and Patty have already put in a advanced request to Steve Runnels of the National Weather Service for mostly cloudy and like 56 degrees for that whole weekend, and no rain either.
But that's my, the weather is, other than we should get extra points for a Skywarn activation.
We really should.
Because we've had some of those. I've been out there furiously cranking the tower down because I got a line of thunderstorms coming at us, and it's like, oh, this is going to be bad. I'm cranking it down, and it's the tower extend. You guys, I don't know if all of you have had a chance at that. It's a gear worm drive thing, and one turn moves at about 1/8 of an inch.
I've helped. I can't remember. Once or twice I've either helped. I don't think I've helped crank it up. I may have helped crank it down a little bit, but even that it's tiring. We really, if at all possible, and it's not too expensive, when we redo those trailers, we need to see about if we could possibly maybe put like some kind of electrical winching system.
I'm all in on selling one or both of those trailers for the box trailer. Patty and I saw several the other day out driving around, nice used size trailers, and they can be air conditioned.
I'm totally on board with the thought of having one that is set up like a racing trailer.
Yeah.
with the way the doors are on it and the way the AC is set up on it. Um, it makes sense. Anything y'all get though, make sure to have that thing GPS protected, because the way trailers disappear around here, you got to have that.
Yeah, that
Well,
would be something that would be
that-
it would be worth looking into.
That's the part of probably next week's rant is the APRS tracker that we could use as ham operators. That isn't the same as like you'd have to commercially pay for.
Yeah.
Apparently the WB0, or his name's Clayton, WB0 something ZI. He's the guy that does the Digipeater on Channel 10 for APRS.
Mm-hmm.
For a good amount of time, that was not working. And the reason I know it's working is because my SDRs are real sensitive to that when I'm monitoring something. I always see the noise level go up, just for a short bit and back down again. And it's like, that's APRS because it's close. I get a pretty strong signal from it. It's been down, but it's working again. Yeah, well, all right.
I get down, but I get up again.
Yep. Anyway, that concludes the 5-minute rant segment of our show this evening. I feel better. I don't know about you guys. I feel better.
I won't feel better until I have 200 gigabit download speeds.
Well, you're just hard to please then.
I know. I've never claimed that I'm not.
Oh my. Alrighty, guys, do we have?
Patty, take us out.
All right.
Yeah.
And with that, we thank you for joining us for this edition of the Jungle Chasers. And we hope to come back with more informative things about the weather in the future. Hopefully next week we'll have a great presentation again for you. It's been my pleasure joining you along for this ride. And this is Patty, KD08EL, wishing you 73 and 88.
And this is Franklin, your jester here at Jungle Chasers. Hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the program. Hope everyone has a great evening, a great week coming up. You got plans for the weekend. Hopefully in your area the weather's nice and you can go out and do those. And with that, I also wish everyone 73s our best wishes and a pleasant evening.
All right, and so I just want to thank Franklin. Thank you for putting all that together, because that kept me from having to spend all that time with them. But like Patty said,
Still got to do it.
yeah, I know, I got it. I know. I'm not going to get off the hook on this one. Anyway, you did a great job. It was very informative. Steve, of course, it was great support. I think we all make a great team. So until next week, we'll say 7-3 from K0FZ, and you all have a good evening.
And this is KA0SPM, the instigator of I'm the producer of this show. I always think, gosh, I've got this to do, but when we get doing it, it's so much fun. I really appreciate this time that we get to have every week. And the comment section was awesome tonight, guys. Thanks for being there. We really appreciate comments, likes. Click the like button, and we want to continue this show and enjoy our time that we have. So, Piv, is it we don't really have a page, so Southwest Missouri Amateur Radio Club is kind of the page right now. Do we have a Greene County Skywarn page yet?
Not a public page. We still only have just the spotter page. I'm not 100% certain yet at this point if I am going to do a public page or just refer people to the regional public page. But I might at some point get around to making a public page. whenever I do, if I do, of course, we'll have that information here and make that available.
Yeah. All right.
We
Let
do have a Facebook page for the regional, as well as if you are a train spotter or a ham that is looking to become a train spotter, we have the Southwest Missouri Skywarn spotter page. That is a group. We provide some education in there as well as daily weather information. So folks are welcome to join in on that. Franklin also has one for Greene County for the spotters. We both have questions that need to be answered when you apply to be a part of that. So with that.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks, guys. This is KA0SPM, and glad that everybody was here for us tonight. So take care, and I'll bring this stream to an end. Have a great night.
Bye.